Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Clinical Podcast Series. My name is Andrew Pucker, your host today. I am the Executive Director of Clinical and Medical Science at Lexitas Pharma Services, and I'm joined by Lisa Ostrin, who will be discussing today a paper called Longitudinal Ocular Measurements in Optometry Students. So this is actually a poster being presented at Academy, so we're here live doing some great research, and we have the expert here in person. So Lisa, since some people may not know you, could you just give a little background on who you are and what you do?
Sure. So I am an associate professor at the University of Houston College of Optometry. I'm a clinician researcher, and my lab focuses on the etiology of myopia and developing treatments for myopia.
Awesome. So you have this really cool poster. Kind of just give an overview of the topic and why you did this work.
Sure. So we are collecting all sorts of ocular measurements in our optometry student population and looking at how those change over the course of their optometry education. So we know that optometry students undergo quite a bit of intensive near work, and we wanted to look at a population that may have stressors and myopogenic factors that would induce myopia progression, in an aim to understand how far into young adulthood myopia can progress.
Yeah, I think there's kind of anecdotal evidence, professionals like lawyers, et cetera, getting more myopic in, their early 20s, which I think surprises a lot of people. So kind of just describe like who was in your study, what kind of measurements you did, that sort of thing.
Well, we're really excited about this study because we hope it's going to be an ongoing study throughout many years where we can collect this really important data on a unique population. So here we're presenting our pilot data. We have approximately 50 participants that we recruited during their first year of optometry school, and they have already presented for a one-year follow-up. So we are collecting measures such as all of the ocular biometry, cycloplegic refractive error, OCT imaging to look at choroidal thickness, retinal thickness, optic nerve head structure, OCT angiography for intraretinal vasculature, as well as wavefront aberrations. And we'll just keep collecting data over the years to see how these individuals change during their time in optometry school, how many of them progress in myopia or develop new onset myopia, and how other factors such as the choroid and ocular aberrations may change as those myopic changes are occurring.
That's cool. So it kind of sounds like the CLEAR study, but in young adults going to college.
In young adults. So I think there's a big question in myopia is if you're doing myopia control as a child and moving into adolescence and teenage years, when can that be discontinued? And really, what is the capacity of the eye, the sclera, to remodel into young adulthood? And interestingly, we have no idea what stops. Why does scleral remodeling stop? And axial length is pretty stable then from 20s for the rest of the life. But we're also doing studies to try and investigate that as well. But here, I think the implications are that if we do observe that students who have excessive near work and very little time outdoors have this potential to progress, then myopia control may need to continue into young adulthood.
So you did a lot of measurements, and I know it's early in your study, but what are some of the early things that you think are important that came out of your work?
Well, the significant result we found so far is that over the 1 year that we measured and followed up these participants, there was a significant increase in axial elongation. And so these are individuals that on average age 22, 23 years old, and we're seeing axial elongation. We did observe a shift, a myopic shift in refractive error, but it was not significant. It'll be interesting to see how that shapes up as we increase our population size. But yes, so we do have a clear indication that axial length increase is still occurring.
Yeah, I don't think every doctor has an axial length or ocular biometer in their clinic, but it's kind of interesting to see, you have someone whose prescription's probably been stable for several years, but their eye is still growing, meaning that maybe something could go awry, and maybe you have that new myope in your optometry class, right? Like, when I started optometry school, I think 2 or 3 people became myopic like in the next year. So it's a real thing, right?
It's a real thing, and we see people progressing and having to change their prescription throughout optometry school.
So kind of knowing what we know now, how would you want to use this in clinic? What should we take away as an eye doctor?
Well, I think we need to consider lifestyle and keep looking at our older teens and young students who are continuing in education and doing a lot of reading. We're also trying to understand what the impact is of near work on myopia. Is that what's affecting these young adults? I think that's still very conflicting in the literature. And so some of our ongoing studies in this same population is aimed at understanding and objectively quantifying their risk factors. So then we can put the ocular and biometric parameters together with their risk factors and come up with some evidence-based recommendations of how these young adults should be handled clinically.
Yeah, so near work's been talked about for decades. Maybe time indoors is a factor. You're still trying to sort that out, so we thank you for doing that.
Yes, and I think a huge advancement in this field is the development of wearable technology, where now we can objectively and continuously measure our participants' near work and time outdoors, and down to the minute. So I think we're going to learn a lot in the upcoming years about environmental and behavioral factors in myopia.
Awesome. Well, I'd like to thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Cool. And I'd like to thank you all for tuning into this episode of the Clinical Podcast Series. I'd like to ask a few favors. 1, like, 2, subscribe, and 3, if you can, tell 10 friends about us. We want to get the word out. So with that, thank you, and I hope to see you on another episode soon.